Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today we are going to talk about the relationship between a book and speaking engagements. And I can tell you that there is a direct correlation between the two. And I'm so happy to welcome Dave to the show. He's been in practice for 30 years. He's been the number one salesman in the country for two different companies in two distinct industries and selling situations. So I'm assuming that's the US, and I'm recording here in Canada. He has presented in 5 Canadian provinces. Woo! I love Canada. 11 countries and 47 states, and authored 13 books, including his most recent book, The Good Book on Business. Some of his other popular titles are Question Your Way to Sales Success, 11 Secrets of Time Management for Salespeople, and How to Sell Anything to Anyone, Anytime. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you, Kim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Dave, let's just get right into this a little bit, because I think people think that you publish a book and you make the money from selling the book. But honestly, there's so many ways that you can use the book. So let me just ask you the obvious question. Is there a relationship between, publishing a book and getting those speaking engagements?
Yes, there is. Although sometimes it's very difficult to trace it, but absolutely. Among other things, a book, if it's a well done book, gives you some credibility, and it gives your message some credibility. So you're seen as a more credible resource than if you hadn't.
One of the things that I found out early in this journey, with my entrepreneurship and then with being an author, is that there's certain stages that you can't get on unless you are an author.
Yes. Yeah, I would say there's certain stages you can't get on unless you're an expert. And being an author is an expression of your expertise. So it's not necessarily that you're an author, it's that you're an expert, and authorship gives you that sense of expertise.
So Dave, share a bit of your story with us, because I didn't get a chance to tell the audience that, you are a father, a foster father, adoptive father, grandfather to 14 children. You and your wife split your time between several different places. Your books have been translated into 8 languages, available in 20 countries. Man, you've trained and consulted for over 500 individual companies. So I want to hear a little bit more about your story. It sounds like you've had an exciting life.
And looking back on it, I would say it's been exciting. It's been a very full life, in a lot of ways. But let me talk about, I think the being very practical, the aspect of the book and the speaking and consulting coaching career, So I was in my 40s, and there's a whole story behind how I got there, but I decided I'm going to be a consultant for the rest of my life. And so I read the books about how you build a consulting practice. And they said 2 things: give seminars and write a book. And I thought, okay, I can do both. I was as a child, if you had asked me when I was 10 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say without hesitation, I would say a writer. I mean, it was just in me, So I did that. I gave seminars, and I looked around for a book. What should I write? And I knew sales, of course, and I decided I'm going to write a book on wholesale distribution sales. And it looked to me like that was a niche market, too niche a market to appeal to a trade publisher. So the first book I did was self-published, and it was called How to Excel at Distributor Sales. It is the one instance where I can say I published a book and made money. I mean, we sold that book for 25 years and had 3 editions, and self-published it. We sold it for $39, and it was a moneymaker. And not only that, I claimed the position as the guru for wholesale distributor sales, and nobody else claimed it, so I did, and I wrote the book So that was my first experience in writing a book. But then because I'm a writer, you couldn't stop me. And so the next one was a trade publication. And maybe I can talk for a minute about the difference between self-publishing and a trade publication.
I think that'd be a good idea. Sure.
Yeah. So with a trade publication, that means it's a publisher. You go into Barnes and Noble, pull the books off the shelf. So in order to do that, you have to get an agent if you're going to sell a nonfiction book. And in order to get an agent, you have to have a book proposal. So the first step in the process is create a book proposal, which is a pretty significant document, 7,500 pages, very significant document, a lot of work. And so that's what I did. And then I found an agent who liked the proposal. We went back and forth 2 or 3 times. And then he decided he's going to sell it, which is really an important piece, I think, of the whole process, because here you have someone who is making a living selling books, saying he or she will take a risk on your book. So as opposed to a self-published book where there's no one vetting it, here you have someone who's got a vested interest, and then he's got to sell it to a publisher, and that's his job. And the same thing there, you have an acquisition editor at a company who makes money publishing books, saying, yes, we think this book will sell. So there's 2 levels of vetting before the book even gets written, and then you sign a contract, and then you write the book. And then, typically you're going back and forth with the publisher a couple times. And so you're getting it vetted again, this time with an editor. So one of the differences, I think, between a trade publication and a self-publication is, from my perspective, and again, I've done 5 and 5 or something like that of each. And from my perspective, the trade publication is far more likely to be a substantial book. Self-published book could be anything because there's no limits. There's no borders. There's no barriers to entry. Nobody vets it. Anybody can write a book. That's not the issue. The issue is somebody going to buy this? And when you have people whose living it is behind it saying, yeah, we're going to publish it, that says something about the content in the book.
Yeah. It's hard because so very few people actually get the opportunity to work with publishers. So sometimes the only choice you have is to self-publish. But I do agree that because of the level of vetting and, continuous vetting, they do tend to be a higher quality book. But I want to just touch in on something you said there, because I think this is a misconception that people have. They think a publisher is looking for a good book, like a book that's well written. No, they're not looking for a book that's well written. You said it. They're looking for a book that will sell. And I think that's important to note, because people think, if I write a really good book, a publisher will want it. Not necessarily. Not
necessarily the case at all. Yeah, that's right. So, one of the issues is the relationship, again, between a published book and speaking engagement. And I found it to work in a couple of different ways. One is that the first book, the distributor sales book, because that was such a niche, it was a tightly defined niche, and I could identify all the buyers, at least in theory, and so that's a key to a self-published book is, do you have a very well-defined niche, and can you identify the people within that niche? And so it then became an opportunity for people to see me as an expert, and therefore I got speaking engagements because of that book. Now, after that, I would say for the most part, it'd be very hard pressed to connect a book to a speaking engagement, except one of my more recent books called How to Sell Anything to Anyone, Anytime. And that became a world book, went around the world, was published in 8 different countries, 8 languages, 20 different countries. And one of the places it was published was Colombia.
Oh, wow.
And Colombia. And I don't know why my books always do better overseas than they do in the U.S. And this is one. It was the best. It was became a bestseller. And so as a result of that, I mean, very specifically as a result of that book being a bestseller, I was invited to speaking engagements in Colombia, and they were, they were significant engagements. And one of them was a trade show. I was the keynote, and the publisher had a booth, and the only thing in the booth was my book. So there's 500 copies of my book, and I had a press conference, the whole thing, very specifically as a result of that book. But that was in a different country. So from my experience, again, it's very hard to connect a book to a speaking engagement for the most part. The book gives you credibility and a sense of expertise, and that's what gets a speaking engagement. So it's a necessary step, but only on a couple of times. And of course, the case in Colombia was one. I did something very similar in Mexico too. So, yeah.
I think the thing is that the people that I know that have been successful with their book with speaking engagements, they looked at the book as a tool they use.
Yes.
They didn't look at it as the field of dreams where they write the book and everything falls in their lap. Yes. They used it as a tool. So they were getting the book out there. They were creating buzz around the book. They were sending the book to these booking agents and, conferences and workshop coordinators and all these types of things. So the book became a tool that just made them stand out, but they used the tool to get the speaking engagements.
Yeah. So particularly with a self-published book, so you're gonna get 200 to 300 of them. So give them away. Absolutely, it is a tool, and so you ought to have, again, if you're trying to build a speaking or consulting practice, you ought to have a niche market in mind. You ought to be able to identify the buyers in that market, who they are, and so send them a book. You give them away. And that is the best way to get them in the hands of people, because they're not going to find it. They're not going to come to you. You have to take it to them. So hopefully, you send 10 books to 10 of them. Maybe one of them read it and say, hey, let's talk to this guy.
I love it. Well, we're going to stop briefly for a quick ad break. Audience, if you've been thinking about writing a book for your business and wondering if you are ready, then make sure you listen to this ad. I have a new quiz available that is going to help you to determine whether you're ready and what the next steps are. And even if you're not ready, what the next steps are. Welcome back. Dave, I've really been enjoying this conversation, and, let's go into this a bit deeper, because I know that you've come prepared to really talk about this relationship. So I'm going to let you loose a little bit to share some of the things that you've prepared for us today.
So specifically on the issue of speaking engagement and building a practice, using a book to build a practice. Let me just go off on a little bit on the margins of that. Let's talk about writing as a way to build a practice. And one of the things that I did, I think that absolutely built my practice is, okay, we had a book, and then we had several, and then eventually we had 10. But more importantly than that was I wrote articles. And over the years, we collected a list of 400 or so trade publications. And back in the old days, before email and all that, I mean, we were doing it then. We would hard copy snail mail an article once a month to every one of those trade publications. And anywhere from it was simultaneous simultaneous, what's the word? Submission. There you go. To multiple publishers at one time, but I retained the copyright and said, you can use this as long as you put a little blurb in, my bio, and you're free to use it. And so every month, anywhere from 0 to 50 trade publications would pick up the article, and that is more than anything else what led to the growth in my consulting practice. People would read an article, and then they'd call and say, it sounded like you were talking about me personally in my business. And we get in a conversation that led to either a speaking engagement or a consulting arrangement of some kind. So the written word is a precursor to opportunities to speak and consult. And while a book is, is one way, the written word in articles, and I guess today blog post is another way. But again, the issue has become, and this is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, the issue has become that anybody can write a blog post and anybody can write a book. And so the world is cluttered with people whose work has not been vetted. And so there's more difficulty on the reader to select than there was in the past, because you had somebody standing between you and the author. So in the case of a trade publication, you had the editor standing between you and the author. These days, there's no one between you and the author. And so as a reader, it's a little confusing, and you have to work harder as a writer to penetrate that mass of stuff out there to get your word respected.
Yeah, that leads to my personal beef, and that's people who think that you can use AI to, to write articles and all that and be seen as that expert in your niche. It just, it doesn't work. Now, don't get me wrong. I think AI has some great uses. I do use it in my podcast. My daughter helps me out. AI is really great for writing show notes. You plunk the audio in, it analyzes it, it spits it out. You still have to work on it a little bit, but it gives you a nice framework. I think there are some places for AI, but, in terms of content, your voice, being an authority, sharing your expertise, that can't be done through AI. You're not going to be seen as the expert. You're just going to be the same old blah stuff that everybody else is reading because your voice isn't there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I agree with you. There is a place for AI. We use it to do a first draft of marketing messages. So give it like I'm doing a webinar later this month. So gave it the charge to create an email promoting the webinar, and it did, and it's a good first draft. But you have to work with it. Other than that, I really am opposed to attempting to use AI to write articles and blog posts and so on, because it's deceptive. It's not you.
Yeah.
It's a lie, and I don't like that.
One of the things that I was thinking about while you were talking is the fact that, a lot of my clients have told me that the process of writing their book actually helped them with their expertise. It helped them to put their expertise into a way that was easily explainable. And I think, when you publish a book, and even if you self-publish, now don't get me wrong, okay? My clients all self-publish, but I make sure the book is excellent before they self-publish it, because I won't put it up for them if it's not excellent.
All right.
So I do all the vetting part for them, but the process of the book itself actually enhances your expertise, because now you have to explain it. And so I think, when we talk about the relationship between a book and speaking engagements, I think one of the things that's unseen is not the book itself, but the process of writing the book really helps you to cement that expertise and cement your messaging and, cement the systems that you use and cement the ways that you explain things.
Couldn't agree with you more. The process is incredibly important. I like to think, I'm not sure what I think about something until I start writing about it. And the process of writing, because it forces you to commit to words. See, when it's all in your head, it doesn't have to take that kind of specificity. But when it comes in out of your head onto paper, and it's words on paper, you're committed to those words, and so they better be right. And so the process of writing about something is a way for me, anyway, to think about it and to discover what I know and don't know. you know. And there's another little piece of that, and that is speaking engagements. So one way to refine your message that becomes a book is to speak about it, because there you get immediate feedback, you know. So if
Yes.
you got a one-liner you love, and you use it in a speaking engagement and nobody reacts to it, don't put that in the book, you know. So it's so you have an opportunity to get feedback on your message and the content through a speaking engagement and refine it, so that the book again is something that's been refined and honed a little bit in the real world.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I love to listen to teaching and training, follow. I like to be mentored.
Mm-hmm.
I like to follow a lot of people. I am constantly learning. But one thing I've figured out is that there really is no one way to do things. So, you always have these gurus that tell you, oh, you have to write the book first, then you do the speaking engagements. And then you'll have someone say, no, you do the speaking engagements first, and
Mm-hmm.
then you write the book. And
Mm-hmm.
what I've learned is that sometimes you do the speaking engagements first, then you write the book. Sometimes you have to
Mm-hmm.
write the book first before you do the speaking engagements. So I
Yeah, that's
think
right.
you really have to look at, what is the best avenue for you. But some people actually, what I have found, and I mean, I have worked with, well, probably closer to 300 clients now, but at least
Okay.
200 clients, is some people are better verbally than they are in writing. Others
Mm-hmm.
are better in writing than they are verbally. And I
Mm-hmm.
found the people who were better verbally actually did better speaking everything out, refining speeches, working through things, doing the videos and all that
Mm-hmm.
before they did the book.
Mm-hmm.
But people who tend to write over speak, it's actually better for them to write the
Mm-hmm.
book first,
Yeah.
then work on the speaking, because you're
Yeah.
working with your strength.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think that's the key, is to discover where your strengths lie, and nurture your strengths, play to your strengths instead of trying to overcome your weaknesses. Nurture your strengths instead. Yeah.
So Dave, let's switch gears here,
Okay.
because you have written a lot of books.
Mm.
And so first of all, tell us about the current one, the one that is near and dear to your heart, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions.
Okay. Well, I think I have two books that are near and dear. The How to Sell Anything to Anyone Anytime book. Unfortunately, I think if I had to do over again, we'd come up with a different title. It's about sales processes, and it's about how organizations can sell better and how individuals can sell better. And the book became, like I said, became a worldwide seller, and I had three international entities recommended as one of the 5 best English language business books, not sales books, business books. So really, it's a substantial work, I think, and the title doesn't convey the substance of it, So but that really, I mean, it's a really good book, frankly, and I recommend everybody get it if you're going to sell anything, either as an organization or a independent contractor or a salesperson. That you need to read that book, How to Sell Anything to Anyone Anytime. So that's one. And then the most recent book. Now I'm working on another one right now, but the most recent book is something I call the Good Book on Business, and that was a title. It's kind of interesting. So that was a title about the biblical principles in business. And here's a nice little story, because it illustrates some of the things we're talking about. So I sent it to my agent, who said, I'm not sure about this because it's kind of, quote, religious, and he was the one who titled it. My agent came up with the title for it. And I said, okay, let's give it a shot. And he said, okay, we will. And so he created the title. We created a book proposal. He put it off, and he couldn't sell it because the view was that it was a religious book, not a business book, when in fact it was both. So it came back to me. I said, okay, then I'm going to self-publish it. And so I self-published it. And, it's kind of a nice story about how these things work in real life. And so, and that is a book that there are insights. I tell people, once you read this book, you will never think of business the same, because it's an incredible business has an incredible place in the stories of the Bible, and we don't recognize it because we never looked for it. But once we begin looking for it, we see it all over the place.
Yes.
Business is really truly close to the heart of God.
Dave, I could not agree with you more. As a Christian, my journey in entrepreneurship has been very much guided by the principles in the Bible. It has been, guided by God.
Sure.
I pray about my business,
Sure.
and, God has closed certain doors. He's opened certain doors.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He has told me things that I can and cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that may seem strange, but to be honest, the things that he has told me not to do actually have protected me in my business.
Yes.
And kept me. And now, don't get me wrong, I can't say that, everything was a success and, I've had this rise, whatever. Okay, I've had some deep valleys in the business sometimes,
Sure.
and I've had some failures, and I've had some times where I'm just like, seriously, God, like, why am I even doing this?
Yeah.
But some of the things he protected me from, because I said no, because I felt his leading to say no,
Yes,
have actually been great blessings in my life.
Yes. I've had exactly the same experience, Kim. And that is, not only has he opened doors for me and closed others, there are times when he absolutely said no to something that I was working on, and looking back on it, whoa, was I glad that he didn't do that thing, and I had the sense he was protecting me. He's protecting me from a situation that would certainly go south. Well, so I'm going to recommend you and everybody else go get the Good Book on Business, Amazon or wherever you want to buy it. It's all over the place, but the Good Book on Business, and you will see, again, your views on business will never be the same. You'll see business in the light of the Bible in a way that no one, to my knowledge, no one has really come across until we dug into this book.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So, Dave, there's one question I ask every author that comes on the show, but because you have both trade published and self-published, I want you to answer it twice. So once, from the trade publisher point of view, and once from the self-publishing point of view. So the question is this: what has been the good, the bad, and the ugly about writing, editing, publishing your books? And you can go at it from both sides.
Yeah. Well, okay, let me answer it twice then. First, from the publication, from the perspective of trade publication. The good is you're working with professionals, people who really know their business, and that's their living. And so when they say this doesn't look good, or don't do this or do that, you listen, because you're getting wise, experienced advice. A trade publisher will promote the book and distribute the book in ways that you probably are not going to be able to do it. So if you're looking for widespread distribution, a trade publication is the way to go. The bad side is that it's a lot more work. Like, so you got to create a book proposal. I mean, that's a 75-word document, just in the hope that somebody can use it to sell the book. So it's a lot more work, and it's it's work that you don't necessarily enjoy doing, like looking up the competitors of this book and reading them all. And, it's, so anyway, that's the trade publication. The self-publication, you have the ability to control it, which is a mixed blessing, because you may not have the wisest word on this thing. You might think you do, but maybe somebody else does as well. So that's a plus. You can bring it to market quickly. A trade or a self-published book can get to market much more quickly. You can acquire copies less expensively, because the trade publication is going to put a little profit in the books you buy from them. And so if you want to use it as a tool, send it out to all your prospects, you can do it cheaper with a self-published book than you can with a trade-published book. But right off the top of my head, I say those are the goods and bads of either side. If you want, if you're interested in publishing internationally, a trade publication is the way to do it, because they have departments that do nothing but that. So
Yes.
in my case, all of my trade publication books have gone international, and like say the how to sell anything to anyone anytime is in 20 countries, and so on. So, but I can't do that myself. I wouldn't even know where to begin. It'd be a lot of work trying to get a self-published book international. So, there's pluses and minuses. Just depends on where you are in your career and what you want the book to do for you.
Thanks, Dave. I love that. This has been a fantastic interview. So, Dave, we have just enough time for you to share a final thought. And then if people have enjoyed this conversation, how can they connect with you?
Well, they can connect at my website, www.davekahle.com. And that'll take you to lots of different places. I have e-zines that I write every week, and we have a couple podcast shows and blogs and all that. So, there's a lot of stuff you can access through that. I guess my last thought is that I think if you're a consultant or a speaker, the book is necessary from two perspectives. Number one, again, we talked about the credibility issue, but the other piece is that the book forces you to think precisely. And as a coach or a consultant or a speaker, you are expected to have a coherent, well thought out message. And sometimes the only way to do that is to write about it first. The act of writing forces discipline, forces clarity, forces specificity, And I think if you're gonna put yourself out there as a coach or a consultant or a professional speaker, you're expected to have a coherent message, and the way you get that, one step in the process, is to write about it.
Couldn't agree with you more, Dave. Dave, thank you so much for being on the show today. Audience, if you have enjoyed this episode and you're on YouTube, you're going to see a thumbnail somewhere here on the screen, and it'll be just the previous episode 474, Secrets for Keeping Your Message Seen and Evergreen. If you are on your favorite podcast app, it's really easy this time. Just scan back one. It's another great message that will enhance your business and help you with your messaging and help you to be seen even more. So, audience, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.